It's Doris with All of the Books, and I'm here with my February mid-month wrap-up. The first half of February was great for reading, definitely. The first book I finished was Amy Tan's The Bone Setter's Daughter. This was a reread for me. I've read all of Amy Tan's works now, and just wanted to revisit this one because it's one of my favorites. This is set in, I believe, San Francisco, and it's Amy Tan's books are always set in the current time, but then with sizable chunk of the book, like I would say at least 60% of the book or 70% is always a flashback to a previous time in history. So this one, and also with Amy Tan, her books are always set with a relationship, most of them anyway, and this one is a mother-daughter relationship. So the mother is has come from China years ago. The daughter was born in the States, and she has a relationship with a partner that's struggling a bit, and she feels like she's on shaky ground with that, and the mother is developing Alzheimer's. Then the flashback is set in China just after World War II, or right at the end of World War II, and it's really neat. This one is neat to me because it's set in a small village, so you get the customs and superstitions of the small village life, which is really interesting. And it's also set around Peking Man and what those bones meant to the village people before they realized that they were, you know, ancient historical findings. So really interesting, all of that. So the first part of the book that was set in the present was a little bit boring to me, to be quite honest. But then obviously the middle section was fascinating. And then by the time I got to the end, when she comes back into the present, that part became interesting to me as well. So it's really great the way she weaves in the past with the present and makes it all tie together. So I highly recommend Amy Tan's writings, and this is one of my favorite, The Bone Setter's Daughter. And then I got to one of those, I can't believe I haven't read it yet, books. Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. This is set around a young girl who's raised by her grandmother, and you get a little bit of her early years, and then you get a little bit of her early teen years, and then there's this scene where the girl is under a pear tree in the spring and watching it blossom and the bees, and it was just really gorgeous writing, nature writing, and I am into that scene, you know, definitely watching the bees and the flowers is just, I'm there. But then I realized what was going on. I was like, she's not going there, and she did. She like had the flowers, all the blossoms on the pear tree just had a simultaneous orgasm to symbolize this girl's transition into her sexuality, to realize that. And from there, it's just the girl's life. The grandmother forces her. This is the first couple chapters. The grandmother forces her into an early marriage with a much older man, and where it progresses from there. The story really comes alive in the second half, where she kind of comes into her own as a woman and a character and in charge of her own life and destiny. And what I liked most about it, I love those last 10 chapters because the whole book is set in Florida, the panhandle of Florida, Central Florida, and then the Everglades. And being a Florida native, that was fascinating to me, especially a couple things that went on that I don't really want to tell you what they were because they're toward the end, and I don't want to spoil anything in case you read it, but I really liked the Florida scenery and things that went on in Florida. But what I really appreciated was an essay at the end of this book that talks about Zora Neale Hurston herself. And yeah, her work was rediscovered after kind of being buried for 30 years, and you wonder how that can happen. And the guy who wrote the essay talks about Zora Neale Hurston, her thoughts on writing were to record Black culture and Black mythology and just preserve that for future generations. But she was writing prior to the Civil Rights Movement, during a time when the focus of Black literature was on socialism, not socialism, but social aspects, you know, pushing the social consciousness of the people. And she was kind of blackballed for that, and it really was sad. She ended up, you know, after being a Guggenheim Scholar, she ended up being a substitute teacher and cleaning hotel rooms and buried in an unmarked grave. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in reading. She's got some more works set on the mythology and things, and I want to pick those up and read them. I think they'll be really interesting, especially being that she's such a Florida writer. I think I'll connect with those. So anyway, that was Zora. And gosh, I'm at 6 minutes. Let me hurry up. Angie Thomas. Okay, another one that, you know, I had to get read and did not disappoint. I know this book is so hyped, but there's a reason for it. I really respected this author so much. She took the story and the Black Lives Matter movement, and she just, I know she sat down and made an outline of every aspect that you could think of, every way that people could approach this topic in their thinking, and she incorporated all of it into this novel. And yet it's such a story. It doesn't read like an academic outline, and you never realize that that's what she's done as you're reading it. It is just a story beautifully told with characters that you really love and appreciate and connect with, and, you know, want the best for them. I just thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's very even-handed. She approaches the topic from all sides and just makes you see it from everybody's point of view, and it's just impressive. And the other thing that I just have to mention, Angie Thomas's linguistic skills are so brilliant. So the girl, the main character, Starr, her father was in a gang, in a drug lord gang, in the inner city, and he had gotten out of it, but he didn't want to leave his neighborhood. He wanted to stay and support his neighborhood and try to bring it up. So they're still living in that drug-infested neighborhood, with violence and things in their daily lives. But he's taken his kids and put them in a private school in the suburbs. So they go to probably 95% white private school in the suburbs. So Starr is transitioning between those two environments on a daily basis. And the dialogue in here is perfection. She speaks the teenage voice, but even more so, you can watch Starr transition linguistically between friends from her neighborhood, friends from her school, and even with her parents. There's 3 distinct speech patterns, and it's just like, wow, she's amazing. Kudos to Angie Thomas. I really loved this. Okay, so then we have my second Mary Stewart, The Gabriel Hounds. This was delightful. These are great buddy reads if you just want to read cozy mysteries with your friends. There's so much to talk about, and it's just really fun. And I love the settings. She is so brilliant with writing the setting. And even the plot, she keeps you guessing so well. They're just fun. They're fun and beautiful to read. This one was set in Lebanon. The first one I read was set in the UK. And then the third one I'm on right now is set in Greece. So highly recommend Mary Stewart. And if you're wondering where to get these copies with the pretty covers, or in general, Book Depository is where I get them. So, and they don't look like this on their images, but they are this copy, this edition. So fun stuff, especially if you're reading Mystery Madness for March. Anyway, Bluebird by Attica Locke. This is another mystery. I should have saved it for March, but I didn't know. But I loved reading this. I fully intend to get I think it's the cutting season. I want to get that one next. But this was great. And while it is a mystery story, I felt like that was kind of almost a minor point to the story. It was more about the characters and the racism in the small Texas town. So it's a Texas Ranger who is African American, and this little tiny community where, you know, you can see the racial tension quite obviously, and there's been a dual murder of an African American man who's from out of town, Chicago lawyer, and then a white girl from the community, a younger white girl from the community. So it's really a great story. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then another one I thoroughly enjoyed. It was a great beginning of the month. So, A Kata Witch by Nnedi Okorafor. This one is set in Africa. I believe it was Nigeria. Yes, Nigeria. So the girl, the main character, Sunny, she was born in the States to Nigerian parents, and they have since moved back to their homeland. And she is albino, you know, with everything that entails. But when she moves back to Africa, she soon realizes through some neighbors that she has got some special magical gifts. So this is, I don't know if it's okay to say, but it's very reminiscent of Harry Potter in the whole, they form a group of 4 who are kind of taught, not necessarily in a school, but it's a more of a community training setting. But these 4 are a core group that are tasked with fighting magical crime. And really neat read. I loved the atmosphere of it. You're very much immersed in the Nigerian culture. And then, you know, the transitioning between cultures, because there's another guy that's also from the States and moving back to Nigeria. And I thought it was really interesting too, this was just a side note, but the sense of discipline with kids in here is so much different from modern day ideas. I mean, now, you know, it's frowned upon to spank your kids, but I certainly was spanked as a child. But it goes even further here with how the kids were disciplined. And I think it was just really neat to consider that as part of the story and the cultural line, and the fact that she kept that in the story. I don't know, I just really had thoughts about that. I found it was interesting. But I highly recommend these. I'm going to get a Kata Warrior very soon. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And then the last one, The Sisters Are Alright, Changing the Broken Narrative of Black Women in America by Tamara Winfrey Harris. This was the only one that I didn't get along with quite as well as the rest. The rest were stellar. And this one was okay, and I learned from it. But it's written kind of like a dissertation, and that's fine. It's nonfiction, by the way. But this, ironically, reminded me a lot of White Trash that I read at the beginning of last year. Not in the topic, but in the approach. So it's the idea of taking a topic and showing how points in time and history and current society point to that topic. So to me, it's almost like, you know, being put blinders on. The author leads you to their point of view instead of presenting evidence and letting you come to your own conclusions. And that's something that I don't really like in nonfiction. I appreciate her arguments in a lot of the chapters, like the chapter on natural beauty, like with natural hair and just in general, I just really loved and connected to. But some of the chapters, like the one on Black women being too strong, I mean, I think there was definitely foundation for that in society, but I think there was foundation for an argument against it as well. And I just prefer writings to be more equally balanced and approached. So I think this is a great book depending on who you are and where you are in life and what you need to read. But the approach of this kind of nonfiction isn't for me. So anyway, it was a great reading month, and I will be back with part 2 very soon, but I'm losing my light. Ah! Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon. Bye.